Alright, we're going to do a few extra examples here. The first two that we're going to do are with inscribed angles. So again, that's an angle that is touching the outside of the circle 3 times. And the relationship here is that the angle is half of the arc that it makes, or you could say the arc is double the angle. So here we have this angle, which is opening up to this arc. So since this is the arc that we're looking at with the angle, we can just say the angle is half of the arc. So this angle is equal to half of 120, which is 60 degrees. All right, the second example that we're going to do is just going in reverse. So this is another inscribed angle. It's touching the outside of the circle 3 times. And the angle is opening up to this arc. And the arc is double the angle. So if we do 35 times 2, we'll get that this angle is 70 degrees. Okay, so inscribed angles are pretty simple. So if you see one that is touching the circle 3 times, then the relationship is the angle is half the arc, or the arc is double the angle. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is with one tangent segment in here. So let's move on down to these. All right, the relationship here is exactly the same as an inscribed angle. I have that written over here. So even though it's not touching the circle 3 times, the vertex is on the outside of the circle. So it has the exact same relationship as an inscribed angle. If you look at this angle, it opens up to this arc here. Okay, so what I just highlighted in yellow, well, you can't see that very well. I'm going to highlight again. The angle is opening up to this arc. Okay, so the arc is going to be double the angle. Remember, arc is double the angle. So we're going to do 120 times 2, and that will give us this arc here. So this is 240 degrees. But this problem is actually asking for this part of the circle. So since all the arcs add up to equal 360, then all we need to do to find the question mark is 360 minus 240, which is 120. Another way that you could have solved this problem, you could have said these two make up a line. So if this angle is 120, then this angle here would have to be 60 because they have to add up to 180. So then you would just do 60 times 2, and that would give you 120. So there are multiple ways you can solve these problems. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for this one. So let's try it the second way this time. This angle is equal to 40 degrees, but these two angles make up a straight line. So they need to add up to equal 180, meaning that this would be 120 degrees. And then that would make, or sorry, this would be 140 degrees. So if I know that this angle is 140, if we look at the arc that it creates, it's this, which is exactly what the question mark is asking for. So then we just do 140 times 2, which would give us 280 as the question mark. Okay, again, you could have worked it the other way. So you could have said, well, since this is 40 degrees, then this arc would have to be 80 degrees. And then you would just simply subtract from 360 to get that the arc is 280. Okay, so again, tangent is the same as inscribed. So the angle is half the arc, or the arc is double the angle. One of the main things that you have to keep in mind for these problems is that all the arcs must add to 360 degrees. Okay, so you just really have to look and see what arc it's asking you about, and you might have to subtract from 360. So looking down here, the circle has 360 degrees total, and the tangent angle is half of its arc, or the opposite, you multiply by 2 to figure out the arc if you're given the angle. Alright, moving on to some two tangent examples. The formula here, if you remember, you created this quadrilateral, and these two angles, or you could say the arc and the angle, have to add up to equal 180 degrees. So let's just go ahead and draw this shape in the first diagram, just so we can get a visual. Okay, these are both 90 degrees. And now these two things are going to have to add up to equal 180 degrees. But we don't know this arc yet. Okay, we don't know the arc, so we don't know the angle. But we do know that this whole thing over here, this whole arc, is 270 degrees. So to find the other arc, all I have to do is subtract from 360. So that means that this arc right here is going to be 90 degrees. Okay, since that arc is 90 degrees, it also means that this angle is 90 degrees. And now we can solve for this angle over here. So we're just going to say 180 minus 90, which should give us 90 degrees. Okay, so let's move on to another problem here, another example. And let's just try this one by drawing the shape again, just so you can get a visual. Alright, so since a quadrilateral has 360 degrees, then, and these two are already 90 degrees, then that means that these two must add up to 180. So if this is 40 degrees, and these two have to add up to 180, then that means that this is 140 degrees, which is the same as the arc measure here. So that means that this arc is also 140 degrees, causes a central angle. And then all that we'd have to do to figure out this arc is use the fact that all the arcs have to add up to 360 degrees. So to find the question mark, we'll have to do 360 minus 140, which is 220 degrees. All right, so for this one, you really just have to remember the formula. These two angles have to add up to 180 degrees, or you can say that this arc plus the angle measure has to add up to 180. So let's work some more problems. This is with one tangent and one secant. And this is the big formula that you have to remember. Big arc minus little arc divided by 2 equals the angle. So the first thing, we're going to look at the big arc, which is this. So we're going to do 132. And then we're going to subtract the little arc. Okay, so we're going to subtract the little arc, which is this. And that's 88. And then divided by 2, and that will give us the angle on the outside. So 132 minus 88, let's calculate that. All right, that's going to be 44. So it's going to be 44 divided by 2, which is 22 degrees. All right, so this one you really just have to remember the formula, and then it will give you the answer. With number 2, this is exactly like the problem that you have on your homework. So we're still going to use the same formula, big arc, which is now what we don't know what the big arc is. So big arc minus little arc divided by 2 equals that angle. So since we don't know what the big arc is, we're going to call this x. So we're going to say big arc, which is x, minus the little arc, which is 92, divided by 2 equals the angle. And we're actually given the angle here, so this is equal to 35. So now we just have to solve for x. If I covered up this side, you can see that x is having 92 subtracted from it, and then it's being divided by 2. So we need to get rid of this divided by 2 first. So the opposite of dividing by 2 here would be multiplying by 2 on both sides. So we're going to get x minus 92 equals 35 times 2, which is 70. And then, since 92 is being subtracted from x, all we have to do to get x by itself is add 92 to both sides. So our answer is going to be 70 plus 92, which is 162 degrees. All right, this problem is slightly more complicated because this big arc here was what we were trying to solve for, but you had every other piece, so you just use opposite operations to get x by itself. And down here, I just have a little, remember the formula, so you can say big arc minus little arc, which is like what I like to say in my head, or you can say a minus b divided by 2 equals c. And it actually works the same for two secants. So up here we're doing this with a tangent and a secant, but you can do the exact same thing here. So big arc minus little arc divided by 2 equals the angle. Same thing here, big arc minus little arc divided by 2 equals the angle. All right, now the last big problem that we're going to do is two secants inside of the circle. So those are the ones that look like this. And what I actually like to imagine here is that this is a big plus sign that's on its side. So since that looks like a big plus sign, then I'm going to be adding the two arcs and dividing by 2. So we're going to do arc 1. So here's the formula. Big arc plus little arc divided by 2 equals angle. And it doesn't actually matter which order you do it in. It's just you add the arcs together. So it's going to be 173 plus 155 divided by 2 is going to equal that angle. So 173 plus 155 is 328. So 328 divided by 2 is going to be 164. So the answer for this one is 164. Also, just don't forget that it doesn't matter which side it's on. These two angles are going to be the same because they are vertical angles. So if this is 164, then this is also 164. Okay, second type of problem like this is similar to the first problem that we did, or the second problem we did with the tangent and secant. And the reason it's similar is because one of the arcs that we're trying to find, we don't actually know, so we're going to have to call that x in our problem.